about wildfire and ability to fight fires in the Conifer area. And before Bill takes the mic, can I just ask, is Scott Murdoch here tonight with the... He is here. Good. Okay. Thanks, Scott. Okay.
Thank you. So Joe Sean talked about it a little bit as far as the fires that have been in the area. You know, this season, fortunately, has been a below normal fire season in Colorado. It was forecast that it would be considerably slower than normal with the heavy precipitation over the winter and into the spring. But even with that, in addition to the two fires that the U.S. Forest Service had, we also had, there we go. We also had the 25-acre fire down in Deer Creek Canyon a few weeks back. And that fire actually took a total of about 40 different agencies helping out to contain that. We did get it contained within the first day, which was really pretty remarkable. But again, you know, that's what we're seeing right now in a below normal season. You know, I've gotten kind of a reputation for scaring people about fire, but I think that, you know, that's something that we need to look at. When we look at this area, you know, Colorado has had the largest 20 fires in its history since 1989. Most of them since 2000, and 4 of them have been right here in our area. So we recognize that the risk is great, and it's only getting greater at this point. And part of that is because of, you know, the history of excluding fire from the environment, as Joe Sean mentioned. So as we look at it, you know, we had Colorado State kind of run scenarios to see what it would look like if we had a, you know, a worst case scenario in the area. And, you know, the one that they did, they started it on the computer simulator in Evergreen, and by the end of the second day, it had burned through Indian Hills and was potentially causing fires down in Lakewood. And if you look at the history of the fires that we've had, like the Hayman fire, which is on the map back there, 16 miles in one day essentially would have burned over the entire district. So that's what we're trying to you know, protect against here in our community. One of the big things that we do in conjunction with our federal and state partners and the other local departments is work within what's called the National Cohesive Strategy. And that is a 3-tiered approach to reducing the risk for communities. And one of those is the landscape resilience, where, you know, we try to turn the clock back on landscapes in the area so that they are not, you know, overgrown forests that burn out very intensely. We've started to have some really good success with that, with a number of thinning projects and shaded fuel breaks that protect communities around here. And that's been done largely with grant funding that comes through Colorado State. That funding has been paying for our Mitigation Crew over the last couple of years. And you know, that has obviously made a difference. We did have the first fire in Newton Park, which was recently finished thinning, and that fire stayed to well under 1/10 of an acre, fortunately. One of the other legs of the cohesive strategy is what we call the fire-adapted communities. And fire-adapted communities means that, you know, we do everything we can as a community to keep our homes and businesses safe. And there are a number of projects that we've had going on here locally with home assessments, where you can come by and have someone take a look at your home and provide advice. With the curbside chipping program, which has been a grant-funded program for the last 3 years. That grant funding ends this month. We are going to continue to chip next month, but we will only be chipping next year if the fire department mill levy goes through. In addition, we've been working with the county on planning and building codes and looking at trying to improve how future development goes in here to reduce the risk to all of us. And then the third piece of it is what's called safe and effective fire response. And that is that if we do have fires in the area, we have adequate personnel to respond to and keep those fires small when they are not planned, prescribed events to reduce risk. We've had a few pieces that we have put in place over the years. One of the big issues that we saw from the Lower Norfolk fire was problems with communications. We did get a $1.5 million grant to upgrade the communications around the entire area. That is now up and running. The Wildland Fire Module, our Mitigation Crew, has also been instrumental in helping keep all of the fires small. On the Deer Creek fire, they were one of the first crews in there to put the fire line in around that fire. Those firefighters are very highly trained and very skilled at getting out and doing that kind of work, because the rest of the time they're hiking up the side of mountains and thinning forests. So that's what they do all summer long. So that mitigation crew has been, again, really a useful tool in the area, and it essentially by itself doubles our capability to attack wildland fires. So it has been a really valuable tool to us, and you can see that with last year when we had an above average or above normal fire potential, and yet we kept all of the fires in the area to less than 5 acres, largely because of having those additional firefighters available. So the fire district is going out for a mill levy, and I can explain to you what will be used for that, but it will be the decision of the people of the community as far as whether these are things that they want to support. One of those proposals is to keep that mitigation crew on. We do not have grant funding passed this year for the chipping or for keeping them on for local response. So we will have to drop that program unless the mill levy passes. But if it does pass, we will keep both of those. Something I think that's important to realize with that as well is that the other slash program that's administered by the county is also at risk of going away if the county's measure does not pass. So if both of those measures do not pass, we will be without any slash disposal programs in the community at all. One of the other issues that we have is the ongoing staffing with the fire department. We have 2 people on other than the fuel module each day, and we have, unfortunately, because the number of calls that are increasing, particularly out on 285, a lot of them at Kings Valley intersection, we are out all the time with that, and so 25% of the time we have overlapping calls. We only have 1 ambulance crew. That means that you wait for volunteers on the second out in an ambulance. The problem with that is that we're having an issue with keeping volunteers, and right now with the increasing calls and the decreasing availability, we only have an average of 1 volunteer on each call that goes out. That's not a local problem, that's a national problem. For many years, we have been slowly seeing a decline in the number of volunteer firefighters in America. That's accelerated, and the last report that just came out indicated that since 2015 alone, we have lost 20% of the volunteer firefighters across the country. So that's a massive decrease, and it's hitting every volunteer fire department out there. The issues that we have here locally are that our demographics are very much against us. Only 13% of the people who live here in Conifer are between the ages of 18 and 34. And I'll be honest with you, I'm too old to be a firefighter anymore. I still try, but mostly we need those younger folks to be able to do it. The other issue with it is that almost all of our calls now occur during the daytime when the volunteers are least available because of work. So we have seen a greater and greater stress on the volunteer system here locally. And that's shown up. I think many of you may have heard the discussions we had with the county about trying to support larger buildings in the community and the difficulties we have with that. The recommendations are that if we have a fire in, for example, a townhouse or condo, the recommendations are that we send 27 firefighters, 4 engines, and a ladder truck. We send an average of 7 firefighters in 2 trucks. And then after that, we're hoping that we can borrow from our neighbors as well. That's just, again, a problem that we have with decreasing interest in being volunteer firefighters and an increasing call volume. We've had 20 structure fires since the first of the year. The only year that we had more buildings than that burn in our community was when the High Meadow fire took out 58. So the problems that we've got are most at the 3 volunteer stations at Aspen Park, at Conifer Mountain, and Pine Junction. None of them have the minimum of 8 volunteer firefighters that are recommended to be considered an active fire station, and Pine Junction is down to 2. If we don't turn that around somehow, there's really not much of a way that we're going to be able to keep those stations open and functioning. So one of the proposals that we've got is, for the Mill Levy, it would be partly used to build resident buildings at those stations. And essentially what we would do is offer free housing in exchange for having people willing to come out and be volunteers. That's been a fairly successful model in many communities to slow that trend toward losing volunteers, but it would require a considerable amount of money to put into capital that we don't currently have. Part of the reason for that has been, many of you may have heard of the Gallagher Amendment, which slows our rate of increase. So even though home values have been going up, over the last 5 years, our revenue has only gone up 7% total. So it's not keeping up with our expenses as we move along. Part of that is also because of ambulance revenue and the Medicare rules. So essentially, we only get about 50% of the funding for ambulance transports, and the rest of it has to be written off. There's nothing we can do about that because the Medicare sets the rules. They will pay us a fixed amount, and we have to live on it. That doesn't impact urban departments nearly as much because for them, an ambulance run to the hospital and back maybe 30 minutes. For us, it's 2 hours each time. And so we have a real difficult time with trying to provide that ambulance and keep it in service throughout the day when we're not getting enough money to keep that service active. That has impacted also our staffing, for both the reasons that we have a declining ambulance revenue, and also this year in particular, we've seen some of the grants and contract funding fall off. So we lost 2 paramedics to higher paying jobs this year, and we were not able to fill them. So we are running shorthanded, and we are going to probably stay shorthanded until we have a longer term funding fixed in place. So the proposal again would add back the 2 positions that we've lost in addition again to the other projects I've mentioned. We did have a 2013 Mill Levy. You probably may remember that. That was for 10 years. It has 3 more years on it, and that money we're still making payments on the apparatus and all that we purchased for that. So that Mill Levy will expire in a couple years. In the meantime, a significant chunk of that is still going into paying for the apparatus that we purchased to replace the really old trucks that we had prior to that. Just to kind of explain our funding situation, 75% comes from property taxes locally. The rest is a combination of the ambulance revenue, donations, and grants. We receive no funding from the county, state, or federal government. So currently, Elk Creek is at 7.41 mils. It's the lowest in on the Front Range. The proposal is to bring it up to even with the neighboring departments, Evergreen, and a little bit above North Fork, a little bit below Inner Canyon, but right in the middle there at 12.5. One of the reasons for that is that we have started discussions with the other 285 area departments about potentially consolidating to create better efficiency, to make a better fire department by merging the 4 small departments together. Unfortunately, we can't do that while our mill levy is significantly below the other departments. Those mill levies have to be close enough that we can come up with a single mill levy that will pay for the whole service gluing together. So those are on hold until, until we see whether or not the voters support the mill levy this fall. There are a number of other needs. One of the biggest ones, Mountain Resource Center has a leaking fire cistern. We've got water problems all over the district with old cisterns that need repair, and there's no funding to put those in, any of them back in service. So there's a handful of things like that, and simple things like paving the parking lot at the fire station, or even fixing the leaking roof at the fire station that will also be covered by this. So just like to say thank you for letting me come up and speak with it, and I'll be around if you have questions.